Okay, so we're going to dive into a really fascinating breakdown happening within the Republican Party. But this isn't what you're probably seeing on the news. This isn't your typical story of Democrats versus Republicans. Nope, this is about what happens when a leader's power starts to crumble from the inside out. So, let's get right into it. The analysis we're looking at kicks off with this really telling quote, "Something snapped behind closed doors." I mean, that says it all, right? It hints at this major break happening where nobody can see it. The real story isn't the public drama. It's a fundamental loss of control behind the curtain. The usual ways of keeping people in line, they're just not working anymore. So that brings us to the big question. Why are Republicans suddenly fighting each other instead of the Democrats? Well, it might look like pure chaos, but the source we're examining calls it something else, exposure. And that's that critical tipping point, you know? It's when all that internal fighting finally spills out for everyone to see. And the thing is, once that happens, there's really no going back. All right, to really get a handle on what's going on here, we need a way to make sense of it all. So we're going to use a specific lens, a framework, to analyze the power plays and, frankly, the strategic blunders that are unfolding right now. And that framework is the 48 Laws of Power. Now, this gives us a perfect way to look at Donald Trump's unique style of power. I mean, think about it. It's all built on dominance, absolute loyalty, and a whole lot of spectacle. But, and this is the key part, that exact style, well, it comes with some pretty serious vulnerabilities baked right in. And speaking of those vulnerabilities, that brings us to maybe one of the most bizarre examples you could think of, but it illustrates this breakdown perfectly. I'm talking about Donald Trump's fixation on buying Greenland. Yeah, Greenland. This wasn't just some weird one-off headline. It was actually a symptom of a much, much bigger problem. According to the laws of power, this is a textbook mistake. Law 18 says, do not build a fortress to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. And that's exactly what happened. Donald Trump basically locked himself inside this Greenland fantasy, totally cut off from what his own party was dealing with in the real world. And that kind of disconnect, it's not just odd, it's incredibly dangerous for a leader. Okay, this slide right here really gets to the heart of the whole conflict. On one side, you have Donald Trump's demands, total, unwavering loyalty, defend things that are impossible to defend, take the political hits for him. But on the other side, you've got what Republicans actually need to survive politically, to win their elections, and to talk about things that their voters care about. When a leader's demands are on a collision course with his party's survival, well, something's got to give. So that whole Greenland thing, it wasn't just a weird distraction. For Republicans, it was a political nightmare. It basically forced them into an impossible corner. They had to choose, either defend this personal obsession and look ridiculous to their voters, or push back and risk the wrath of their leader. And let's be honest, when it comes down to it, in politics, survival almost always wins. Okay, so now let's look at how all that quiet resentment starts to boil over into actual open defiance. We're talking about real-world consequences for the Republican leadership in Congress. This chart, man, it shows the erosion of power happening in real time. Look at the Speaker's traditional powers versus the current reality. Speaker Mike Johnson's struggle to control his own members is a massive symptom of this. When the person at the top creates chaos, the whole system starts to fray. You see members using things like discharge petitions, which is basically a procedural end run around leadership to force a vote. They're not asking for permission anymore, they're just doing it. And then you get someone like Representative Don Bacon speaking out. This is a huge, flashing signal. Why? Because he's retiring. He has nothing to lose, so he's not afraid of the political fallout. His defiance is proof that the fear, the very thing that kept everyone in line for so long, is starting to lose its grip. And this isn't random. The analysis lays out 4 clear steps in how this revolt is unfolding. It starts with that quiet, behind-the-scenes resentment. Then it moves to public defiance, like what we saw with Don Bacon. From there, it escalates to procedural rebellion, using the rules of the House against your own leadership. And the final step? Just open, symbolic insubordination. It's a predictable, step-by-step breakdown of control. This brings us back to another one of those laws of power. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. This is so important. It's why threats to, say, oust a speaker becomes such a powerful weapon. It's not really about actually removing them. It's about publicly damaging their reputation and sending a crystal clear signal to everyone else that this person has become a liability. So where does all this lead? Well, it brings us to what the source calls the law of gravity. That's the point where the final outcome isn't really a choice anymore. It just is.
And here's the absolute core of the problem. Fear just isn't working as the primary motivator anymore. There's a tipping point, and the moment it becomes more dangerous for you politically to obey than it is to rebel, that's it. The leader's power is fundamentally and maybe permanently broken.
According to this analysis, we've hit that point of no return. The trust is completely gone. Demanding blind loyalty has become irrational because obedience now carries more risk than defiance. When the leader's personal priorities become a direct threat to the party's survival, the entire structure just collapses from the inside out. So the final question really isn't about loyalty anymore. It's not about ideology either. It boils down to a single, cold, brutal calculation for every single Republican member. Is it safer for my own career to let our leader fall or to try and save him? And for a growing number of them, the answer is becoming pretty clear. And this is where our explainer ends, on this really powerful metaphor. The outcome stops being a choice. It becomes gravity. The idea here is that the collapse of this particular power structure isn't something that can be debated or negotiated anymore. It's just a force of nature, an unstoppable, inevitable pull.